その力私の元で生かして。断る。だが
No, don't use the JoJo meme. It's not worth it for this show. We return to the show with, thankfully, a short recap with, again, no granny this week, and we are finally filled in on Fennel, or rather Godatz's motivations. Because honestly, I'm a bit of an asshole. Yeah, that's just how life is sometimes, kid. Yeah, I'm not even really exaggerating. This dude's motivations were nothing short of petty. He was just jealous of Bombay being the chosen one, so he framed him, and when he did acquire his Master Stone, he was displeased he had to share it with Rosemary, and even blamed him, even though Rosemary had nothing to do with the king's decision. On a bit of a side note, I actually do support him taking down this idiot monarch. But, yeah, so I think my biggest problem with all of this is how little there actually is to this dude's motivations, other than him just being an overly entitled little bitch. For now, at least, there seems to be no real deeper meaning like him trying to overcome the grief of the passing of his beloved master. No, he was already turning evil after Monbei got chosen over him, and somehow that eventually all translated to why to take over the world.
Boy. That escalated quickly.
Anyway, he created an Ubazo out of a fridge, which I'm kind of surprised they haven't done yet, and thus it was up to our superheroines to fight, and... You say the head writer wrote a lot of shonen sports anime, huh? I mean, to be fair, this is much more the boys' conflict than the Precure, who have barely any ties to this by comparison. As a result, this is objectively a more personal and aggressive conflict for them, to the point they're allowed to throw a few more fisticuffs than the Precure. I mean, I'm just saying, y'all are swaying more and more away from the original intent of this franchise.
He's such a bitch!
Fortunately, Bombay tanked the attack with only a little bit of sweat to show for it. Wait, was that supposed to be like blood there or something? I only ask because this cut feels completely superfluous unless they wanted to show something a little more dramatic like blood, but were censored at the last second. Which, if that was the case, then again, the boys are kind of being allowed to be a little more rough because they're boys. Anyway, they patched up our quote-unquote main characters, but Bombay had to pull a Piccolo in the process.
Why didn't you dodge?
Anyway, to this episode's credit, we did get a decently awesome Sakuga sequence as they made quick work of the Ubazo. As usual, it was needlessly broken up by all of the stock animation, but I also really liked the sequence of just Amane running as we got to see everyone's attack go off in the distance. That is legit technically very impressive, so major kudos. Now you see, this is what happens when you don't do a total defrost every once in a while. However, in spite of the monster's defeat, the food fairy wasn't released, I guess because only now they decided to design a lunchbox that didn't break,
The answer is don't think about it!
Anyway, to let her master escape, Secretary launched a kamikaze attack against Rosemary to disperse the delicious field. And even though he probably still could have used her help, he just up and left her behind and pretty much guaranteed another face turn for this so-called villain gang. Yeah, what number death flag is that according to Occupy Ranger? However, as he was escaping, Takumi, Yui, and Rosemary gave chase. This led into both some of the best and worst moments of the show for me. Starting with the legit good stuff, we got Takumi going into full rage mode as he wanted to not only avenge his father's injuries, but also punch the asshat who robbed him of years and years away from his beloved homeland. Much of this was shown through us through just a little flashback where with just some simple expressions and cinematography, we really got to see Bombay's homesickness and Takumi picking up on it. And to top it off, we just got this little bit of a son trying to hold back tears for his father with just some beautiful animation. Even Yui had to relent when she saw how much emotion he was showing off, you know, especially compared to her, which, yeah, who was supposed to be the main character of the show again? Anyway, Takumi confronted Godatz.
何が欲しい
お前の望むものは何でも与えてやる
Jeez, the final boss cliches just keep piling up. And even though the son had every right to punch this entitled asswipe's face in, Yui and Rosemary interrupted. Granted, the latter did manage to put up a better fight than Takumi probably could have alone, but when he tried to join in the fight,
どかないこれ以上行かせない
Urge to kill rising.
anyway, Rosemary managed to seemingly KO Godatz. Takumi kind of wisely decided to go in for the double tap, but again, Yui interrupted and used her usual talk no jutsu. I mean, I get what they're trying to do here. The idea that heroes shouldn't be driven purely by vengeance and all that, even though that is a valid emotion that can be transferred into protecting others, and even if it is indirect, you're still at least ensuring the safety of others. But as usual, Yui went into her little spiel about how this egotistical sociopath would totally see the error of his ways just because all of the cookfires ate from the same kitchen. Yeah, I'm pretty sure a lot of people also ate from the same cafeteria as this guy too. And how does it work out for them?
Now you see that evil will always triumph, because good is dumb.
Believe it or not, I paradoxically see this both as the best and worst moment of this entire show. Obviously, it's the worst because this conflict is now being dragged on because of our supposed main heroine, but it's also the best because Godatz completely and rightfully eviscerates Yui, both for her naivete and claiming that she understands the relationship between the former friends, even though again, not only have the Precure barely had any stake in this conflict, but to say you know anything about a man you only briefly met once before is quite frankly arrogance on level with the villain himself. Some people just can't be helped, especially when they're totally narcissistic sociopaths like this dude, even though they'll probably turn him good too, involving some sort of overly sappy bit with like a rice ball or something. Regardless, Yui finally got some much needed shade thrown on her, especially after the Gentle arc had to bend over backwards just to make her assumptions correct. It in no way fixes the character or this disjointed plot, but honestly, I don't care at this point, and I'm just here for the riffs. Anyway, the episode ended with Komi using more of her god baby powers to instant transmission them back to Yui's place, albeit take her out in the process too. Now, in some ways, I actually really do see this as the best episode of this final arc, though maybe not for all of the reasons the creators intended. On the one hand, it did have some legit great moments of Sakuga and emotions from Takumi, but did also show why Yui could never define herself beyond food and grandma quotes. Honestly, I've long since given up on this show, and I'm just sitting back and waiting until the next season starts. You know, it's actually really appropriate that one of the major themes of Hirogaru Sky is going to be heroes, and not just because of the obvious pun in the title, but also, after this show, Toei really needs to start re-examining what sort of superheroines the Precure are. With this show, they're pretty much just observers to the conflict between the cookfighters. Even the one Cure, who did have legit ties to them, at least through her time in the Bundle Gang, saw absolutely no follow-up and thus sunk into the background. As a result, a lot of the actual emotional stakes, and possibly even some of the more violent action, went to the boys rather than the title characters. Really, another good reason for why the Otherworlder Sora is going to be the next lead Cure is because she will automatically have a closer tie to the main conflict of her show. She was born in the fantasy world they're trying to protect, and thus it's only natural she wants to protect it. Meanwhile here, and well, it always has been a thing for the Precure to save our world since the very beginning in fact, the problem here is that these guys also have a much more inherently strong stake in it. However, because they are guys, they can't take up that much time in a magical girl show, but they also do have to be the focus of the endgame, resulting in a case of the worst of all worlds really. And yeah, I'm sorry if I'm sounding a little disjointed, but that's what this final arc has been like. The point is that while there are kind of elements here that I can get into, like Takumi's anger and determination to avenge what his father lost, I also don't think I should be getting this much invested into the Cookfires conflict over the Precure. But then again, when I see Godatz rightfully call out Yui's arrogant heroism and end up cheering for the villain, it really does show how this pink lead has lucked her way through many of her victories with the likes of Gentle, who she knew nothing about other than some vague clues they conveniently found lying around as though this were all happening for the sake of the plot. And as I keep saying, interesting conflicts like this, where Yui gets called out over her overly idealistic assumptions, really should have happened earlier in the show and not at the tail end of it. As a result, and even though I really did like this little riff track, I'm not expecting a strong follow-up. Still, overall, while I can't honestly say this was a strong episode, as it did end up revealing all the inherent weaknesses of the show's very premise, I can say there were good moments like the brief moments of Sakuga and Takumi's conflict, as well as just some personal enjoyment from me over Yui being taken down a peg. Though, if that is one of my legit pros for the show, then yeah, when is Sora gonna come down and save Kingdom Hearts and this franchise? On that note though, be sure to check out our other latest video on all of the updates regarding Hirogare Sky through its main website. We might do more depending on what comes out, but for now, it at least has more of my attention than the current season, hence why it got a video first. But still, feel free to check it out. Until next time though, for now my friends, and
The Demon King fell out of the sky!
Sora, I think you might have dropped something.